Some family secrets can shake the foundations of the world, and in the Singapore secret, we see a family secret that seems to want to shake the foundations of the world. Hi, I'm Robin. Welcome to Robin True Books, and today I will be discussing the Singapore Secret by Clare Willis. Now, God decided that 2026 was going to be the year I would fall in love with historical fiction, so this is why this was one of my reads. I used to be like, oh my gosh, historical fiction, what's using that? Like, there were some exceptions, I'm not going to lie, but on a general note, I was always like, bleh, who wants to read that? But this book changed my mind, and a few others, by the way. Like I said, it felt like it was ordained for me to fall in love with historical fiction. Now, let's talk about the Singapore Secret. Singapore Secrets. Yes, this book is about two women. So we see a generation, and then she's trying to find out what happened to her grandmother, and then that's how we're taken back in history to the Second World War. We see Singapore. I think one thing it does is that one very important point I'll make is how life can change in a split of a moment. So this is them. They're like, is the war going to affect us? Is the war going to, because it was a world war. So it wasn't like it was a country that was fighting with another country. So if you are not part of the countries, you know that you are separate. But it was because it was World War, there were going to be victims because of alliances to certain countries. So in Singapore, they were not sure. They were like, but you know how the government reassures people like you are in safe hands, you're in safe hands. So something like that was happening over then. And it turns out like very too late that they were not in safe hands. And it just happened in the split of a moment. Like, it was just so fast. What happened was so fast. Now, for the story itself, Dottie is a grandma, and that's what she's called, Dottie. And we see Dottie as a young woman. I think we oftentimes do not tend to think of old people as people that were once young before. So when we read their stories or hear them speak about when they were young, we are always so surprised, like, gosh, this happened to you, why didn't you tell us? So that's the way she's finding out about her grandmother. Like, she's surprised that this is the person her grandmother has, and her grandmother also had a very close female friend. Shout out to female friendships that save us over and over again. Yes, that's an aside, by the way. But yes, our mom has this really beautiful female friendship, and it's blossomed so well. So she can see through letters, like correspondence, how both of them meant so much to each other and how they both helped each other. But there's one thing I'm going to mention is how sometimes love blinds people. So obviously there was a red flag man in this book, and the person in love with him wasn't seeing it, but everybody was seeing it. And I was wondering, why was she not seeing it? And I realized that there's this thing that they say that love blinds is a very true thing. In as much as people try to say, oh, I can see, the very truth is love is blind. Like, love is very, very blind. So most of the time you need people whose eyes are open, that you can listen to too, because sometimes people will be speaking to you and you'll be like, well, what's this one's business? What's your problem? But yeah, another thing I'll talk about is the World War. We often just think of this thing as something that happened in history. We don't really think of the people that it happened to and the various impacts it had. And we can see one of the impacts in Dottie's lifestyle, how she changed from being this very, very alive young woman. Yeah, she's still alive, but there's a part of her that has been muted because of the war, because of the suffering she had to go through. She had to go through so much. Like, so much suffering during the war. Another thing I'll mention is that Sharafon, like, men are so this man, I had a feeling when I met him in the book that he was lying. And like I said, trust your instinct. Like, trust your instinct. I just knew for some reason that this is a shady man. He was lying about everything, and I was proven right. I think when you read the book, maybe you will get a hint or two of who this person is when you start reading. But I was so sure that this is that. Another thing I was talking about is how love as a subgenre tends to be so beautiful. So this baby is in a relationship, and her man has been so awful to her. He even cheated on her, and she's like, she's not doing it again. And then she falls in love with a man that cherishes her as if she's like the sun in the sky, something like that. Like, he just makes her feel so special, and I really like that. Although what I didn't like was that the man have been liking her since, like, for a very long time, and she didn't even know. So yes, that was another thing. Also, I like to talk about the female characters. The female characters in this book are very strong. They are so strong. I mean, dealing with the kind of things they dealt with while maintaining their sanity is very, very applaudable. Many people would not go through half of that and come out the same, but they did because they were very strong characters. Hold on. Yeah, and that's all for me for today. Bye. See you in another video.